All right, everybody. Sebastian Messer, Krieger Band playing. Take it away, Bass. Welcome to the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and I interview authors, artists, and entertainers. We discuss their process, how they overcome obstacles, and their creative works. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hey guys, this is Zach Dennis with Do Savannah and the Savannah Morning News with your What to Do in Savannah update for the Adam Messer Show on WRUU. Thank you guys for listening. You can find Do Savannah at DoSavannah.com and on Instagram at Do Savannah, as well as Twitter and Facebook. Please check us out there to find more on what's happening in Savannah. This week we got a lot of stuff happening, but one thing to highlight, it's going to be the cover of this week's Do, is Flora, which is the new show at Sulphur Studios. This comes from Jose Ray, a Savannah-based artist who you might have seen his work, whether it's out on the streets as well as in exhibitions around town. This is his latest exhibition. He hasn't been in any of the art galleries around town recently, but this one called Flora, which is going to be at Sulphur Studios starting on October 17th, that is on Thursday, is one not to miss. It's based on a floral theme and seems to really work with both kind of an impressionistic look as well as a almost poppy, vibrant. It reminds me a little bit of Andy Warhol just in his use of colors at times. It's one not to miss. We have an article, and as I said, the cover of Do this coming up week. We also have a Savannah-based band, Lulu the Giant, playing at Victory North. That's going to be on Friday and Saturday. This is one of the very first bands from Savannah that is going to be playing at Victory North, so a big deal. And Lulu the Giant, of course, has been on the rise. Their album Solid Gold is one to definitely check out if you have not yet. We also have a new well-lit column coming from Ariel Felton, and Adam himself is going to be writing a few things, but I'll just I'll tease that and say check out what Adam's got going in this coming up Do. But again, thank you guys for letting us check in. Again, DoSavannah.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and have a fun week in Savannah.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. This is the second hour of the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. You're listening to us on WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul, and my special guest today is Rachel Brune. Rachel is an author, an editor. You do a lot of different things, Rachel, so I appreciate you being on the show with us today. The first hour we were talking about your Crone Girls Press anthology. We were talking about basic plot structure. We were talking a little bit about the 15 Beats by Jessica Birdie when Save the Cat writes a novel. And this hour, I want to talk more about like the nuts and the bolts of like editing and writing and that kind of thing. And so you said that you would like to talk about a specific topic. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So editing and editorial is this huge field. And something that I've been learning through this process is that there are differences between editing as, say, a developmental editor or someone who is trying to make a piece better, as opposed to editing or having an editorial eye as someone who is collecting stories for publication.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference primarily is that, say, if you hired me to do a developmental edit of your short story or your novel, or even like a line edit or proofreading, I'm going to be your biggest coach. I'm going to be your biggest supporter and your biggest champion. It doesn't mean I'm going to be it doesn't mean that I'm going to let things slide per se, but I am going to come at it from a perspective of wanting to work with you to make your story better. And I think that to be an effective editor, you really have to come at it from that perspective, which is what I'm used to doing. When someone sends me a story to look at and give them a good critique, I am going to do my best to read the story, figure out where we can improve it, whether it's a structural issue, whether it's a character issue, whether it's a sentence level issue. I'm going to do whatever I can to help you make that better. When I'm reading
Mm-hmm.
submissions that people are sending me, though, I wasn't stepping away from that persona. I was reading every single one, and I've been getting about 10 or 15 a day. And I was
A
reading all of
day.
them a day. Oh yeah.
Okay, so back up. Hold on for a second. Let's sidebar for a
Okay.
second here. A day,
A day. Yep.
Rachel? A day?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
You know, I'll be honest with you because you remember we talked before that I had wanted to do like a sci-fi anthology, and I wanted to. Actually, I had said I wanted to help you with editing for the next one,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because I want my friend and I we talked about doing an anthology a couple of years ago. So this is actually the first time I've been part of an anthology, and
Mm-hmm.
so to hear that you're having 10 to 15 submissions a day, that is an
Yes.
overwhelming large number of submissions.
Yes.
And I'm gonna put this out there to you. When we did the quill, we did an anthology release of short stories. It wasn't as genre specific, but it had to be 1,000 words or less. And
Mm-hmm.
that process itself was grueling. And I had two other people working with me on it. And it was, and I say that because you know, you get a lot of different types of personalities,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a couple of people that were domineering, and it was just very difficult to work with them. And I, you know, honestly didn't like working with them at all. It just kind of sucked the life out of wanting what we wanted to do with the project. It just kind of sucked the life out of it. And so I didn't do it again the next year because of a couple of domineering people with a condescending attitude. And so I can only imagine working, getting 10 to 15 submissions a day, and then on top of that, you're not reading it just to read. You're reading it like with your editor's cap on, saying, "Oh, wait a minute, this is not working because of this XYZ." So that's adding a whole nother layer of work on top of that.
Yes. And it was definitely something that I was finding to be completely overwhelming. And like I said, this is a learning process for me. We kind of talked about this in the first hour, how deciding to do the first anthology, I knew it was going to be a learning process. And so for that one, I was doing heavy recruiting. Like I was reaching out to you, and I was reaching out to my friend Crystal and my friend Elizabeth, saying, "Hey, send me your story." For this one, though, I wanted to open it up. I wanted people to send me their stories
Mm,
now that we have this anthology under our belt, and open it up and see what people will send us. And like I said, it was very, very hard to figure out why I wasn't able to manage it. And
yeah.
then I read an article, and I'm going to have to look up. I was trying to find it before we started talking, but I cannot find it anywhere. But basically, it was an article about advice that people wished they had learned in MFA schools.
Mm,
And one of the things was learn, in MFA schools, as in many writers groups, you're in a critique group. The feedback that you get is from that first editorial perspective, from, hey, I'm here to help you get better. But when you start submitting your stuff, you're going to be sending it to editors who don't have that perspective. They are submissions editors, and they're going to read it from a submissions editor's perspective. And I was like, and suddenly the light bulb went on. I was like, that's right. I am not here to fix every story that people send to me. I am
yeah.
here to find out what is going to work. And when I started realizing that, it it really, like I said, it's a blinding flash of the obvious. But I started to look at it from that perspective, and I started to see that of those 10 or 15 submissions a day, as I read through them, which I typically do at night after I've gotten most of the other work for the day done, maybe one or two will have that spark that will stick with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be the story that I pick from that day for consideration to either the second volume of the horror anthology or to the Coppice and Break, which is the dark fantasy, dark speculative fiction anthology. Excuse me.
You okay?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a great way to look at it. I have a difficult time reading fiction anymore because I've as an adult, you talk about the MFA. I did my undergrad in business. I did my master's in business administration, and then I did a master's of information systems. So I'm used to high level, graduate level writing and reading and nonfiction leadership and things like that. So I really enjoy, nonfiction and self-development books and things like that. It's difficult for me to read fiction because there's a lot of good stuff out there, but there's also a lot of bad stuff out there. And the cool thing about being a self-published author is that you can publish. The cool thing about being a self-published author is that a lot of other people can publish too. And there are folks that they are able to self-edit. There are folks that are not able to self-edit. And sometimes when a story sounds good in your head and your mind, that doesn't mean it's really, a good story, or it might be a good story, but just the way you were telling it wasn't good. It's almost like, to me, it's almost like, you heard a funny joke and then you went to retell that joke and it didn't come out funny at all. You're like, well, it was really funny. You had to be there. Yeah, you had to be there. It was really funny. And, so I have a difficult time reading fiction because of that. And it's not so much that I don't, I really try to support other indie authors. And I do not just try, but I do. I buy their books. I, promote their stuff. I share it. I do what I can to help, push the signal out there. But, I feel like the process is just as important as the idea, because you have to be able to polish your work. You have to be able to put the work in, to learning it. And like this whole year, Rachel, has been a learning curve for me, because I was like, I want to get more serious about my craft. Like, I did not use an outline or a structure for The Blood Thresher, The Devil's in the Metal, which is my first published work of fiction. I did not.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I saw, well, okay, well, I can improve on, my writing by just following a structure. But I had to study and I had to learn, and I'm still studying, I'm still learning. And then the practice, like, I've honestly written about 30,000 words in different forms for the second version of Blood Thresher, the second book of it. But I've rebooted it and I've changed it and I've rebooted it. And this last one, the outline and the structure, I said, you know what? I'm going to write this down. And I just used the 15 beats, sheet. And I used that. But that was something that I had to figure out for myself, was like, okay, like you're talking about a light bulb going off in your head, like, oh, wait a minute. I'm a submission editor when people are submitting it to me. I'm not a content editor. I'm not there trying to critique and help them get better. I'm just trying to look at it and see, does this fit for the anthology? And it's a totally different world,
It really is. And I'll tell you something too. Remember I told you how working in a critique group and editing other people's stuff really helped me to improve my stuff?
Yeah.
The same thing is happening, because as I am reading these, and it's like I said, I'm reading them very quickly. I mean, I read pretty quickly to begin with, but now I'm speeding through. I'm reading the first couple of pages, seeing if it gets my attention right off the bat. And it's teaching me a lot about some things that I might need to do with my own works. I have a couple of short stories in progress and a novel or two that I'm querying. Like, I really need to go back and figure out what I'm doing with these, why, if there is that spark, if there's not that spark. And I mean, it's like I said, I was a writer before I was an editor. the submission guidelines for Crone Girls Press was basically me putting on my writing cap and thinking, what do I want to know when I'm submitting something? What makes the submissions process easier on me as a writer?
Yeah.
And then I switched my hats and I was like, and what do I need as an editor so I'm not spending 30 minutes reformatting people's stuff before we even start editing?
Yeah. I'll tell you what I have used as a rule of thumb, and it goes back to the Save the Cat. I love the Save the Cat stuff. Blake Snyder would talk about starting from the poster and the log line. If you can't summarize your story in a, like a 30-second elevator pitch, basically, you don't have a story. If you can't see it in a movie poster, if you can't see your story as a poster, you don't have a story. You just got an idea. And I just keep going back to that, like, okay, does this thing have bones? And then I'll even run that story by a couple of different people, just random people. Like, I love putting stuff on Instagram. And like this little comic book character I made up, it was called Bionic Barry. And he's at first it was like Barry the Bionic Merc, and then it was Bionic Barry, and now it's Bionic Barry the time traveling Bionic Merc. And I'm like, I just keep evolving it, I'm just pitching it out there, just throwing it out there to people, and seeing if it's got anything. It's like, okay, well, what is this guy doing? Why is he here? And
Nope.
If you don't have the bones, you don't have the bones. You can't take something, and just try to say, oh, it's got to be this way. It's got to be this way. It's just not going to work.
Especially in a short story.
Oh, yeah. Hold that thought. I apologize. I have to hit the 15-minute mark. Y'all, you're listening to WR. We are. Yeah, we all are, right? You're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul, and it is our annual pledge drive time of the year, folks. So listen to these pledge messages, and then I want to share my story afterwards.
What would you do if you woke up one day and WRUU weren't on your radio dial, like it wasn't even there anymore? You would not be able to find any place in Savannah to get the kind of music and news that only this community radio station brings you. Our more than 60 volunteer hosts would not be working right now to bring you hours of entertaining and stimulating programs, and your global soul would surely miss it. Thankfully, you don't have to wake up without WRUU, because people just like you have made generous financial gifts to keep us going. We are listener-supported community radio, so your donation is essential to our continued presence on the air in Savannah. Go right now to WRUU.org and make a one-time or monthly contribution.
Support WRUU with a financial contribution of at least $10 per month, or a one-time donation of at least $107.50, and you'll receive our 2019 thank you gift, a WRUU travel tumbler. This is a 16-ounce hot or cold beverage container featuring double wall construction with a stainless steel twist-on lid, a slide lock drink opening, and the WRUU logo. It's perfect for taking hot coffee or tea, or iced water or other drinks, with you wherever you go. From car to office, home to school, or gym to bedside, the WRUU Travel Tumbler will refresh your body as we refresh your mind. We know the real gift of your support comes every day when you tune into Savannah's most diverse, stimulating, and passionate radio programming. Find the details about the WRUU Travel Tumbler as a gift of our appreciation at WRUU.org. Make your gift right now. Thanks for supporting WRUU Community Radio.
This is listener-supported WRUU 107.5 FM, and we are now in the 9th day of our annual on-air fundraising campaign. We are seeking to raise the funds that keep this radio station broadcasting the music and talk programs that you enjoy. On Saturday, we received 3 donations totaling just under $600. That means we have raised 55% of our $15,000 goal so far. That means that we are on the campaign's downhill end, and you can help us make it to the goal successfully. We set these goals so that WRUU can survive And with your help, more than survive, thrive. And what it takes is your participation. It's very easy and affordable. You set the amount. Our $10 a month option has been very popular this year. The campaign will end soon, so help us with your financial support today at WRUU.org. And thanks again.
This is
All right. And so you just heard the information about we're at 55% of our pledge drive. We're trying to hit $15,000. That's for our operational costs. That's to keep the lights on. That's to be able to pay for our broadcasting fees. The hosts, like myself, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid to do this, the shows. We do it because we love it. I do it, Adam Messer here. I do it because I love talking with other creative people. I interview authors, artists, entertainers, actors, singers, musicians, editors like Rachel Brune, small house publishing companies, like her Crone Girls Press. We talk about cool stuff like that. So, I appreciate y'all supporting us as listeners, as part of the WRUU family. When you go on to WRUU.org and you do the $10 a month or more, which is $107.50, or you could do the $10 a month or more. You get the WRUU Traveler Tumbler, and it's a hot or cold drink tumbler. It's got the WRUU logo on it. Really neat. So, yeah, go on right now, pledge your support, show some financial support for your community radio station, WRUU.org. So, Rachel, thank you so much for being with us today. We have been talking about some cool stuff. So, okay, so I want to pick your brain. You mind if I pick your brain a little bit here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is what I'm here for.
Okay, so I did want to talk about the nuts and bolts about this. So there are a lot of indie authors out there, and, one of the topics I see is like how to write. We see that all the time. Editing, not so much. Working with an editor, not so much. There are different types of editors, like you were talking about earlier. You have content editors, you have line editors, you have, there's a lot of different styles of editors. Go ahead.
Proofreading, copy editing, big ones.
Yeah. What is like the range of fees that someone could expect to pay for their services? Just a sample or like an example of, content editing. What would somebody expect to pay, let's just say, for a 120-page short novel?
It really depends on who you hire. There are some editors who have.
I want dollar ranges. I want a dollar range.
Ranges. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want some kind of, like, it's not like a commitment saying this is what your fees are. I just want like a dollar range for people to say, hey, because that's an atypical type answer. Like, oh, it just depends. Just like specific dollars.
Okay. So, a lot of indie, editors who market to the indie crowd, a lot of times I've seen them charge about a half a cent a word.
Half a cent a word. That's the industry kind of going rate.
Professional rate is more like a cent a word.
Okay.
But people have all kinds of deals, especially, like I said, if they're marketing to the indie crowd, they want to make it feasible because, a lot of indie authors, we're not making super big bucks.
No, not at all.
So you want to make sure that people can afford your services. A lot of times it'll be based on word count, and it'll be like a half a cent a word, or that might be like $200 for this, maybe for 50,000 word edit. It may also be along the lines of, like, for me, if someone is a little bit more advanced and they want to do like a 3-chapter edit, say they're querying to traditional publications, I'll do something like that, depending, for maybe, $50, $60.
Now, just tossing around some numbers here, $500 for a 50,000 word novel.
No, I wouldn't charge that much.
Because that's a cent a word.
Yep.
And see, this is one reason why I want to get into the nuts and bolts of this, because, I always talk about this when the gold rush happened, right? The people that made the money weren't the miners. It was the folks that were selling shovels and jeans.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's what I see a lot with editor services is they're selling, they're selling shovels and jeans to people. And like, hey, I mean, do you know how long it would take on like me, like to get a $500 return on a book? I mean,
Oh
at the
no,
rate that I've
it's
been selling, I don't
indie
make that much money
publishing
on it.
is. I was gonna say indie publishing is definitely. I mean, in order to publish a book, there is definitely an investment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that to shill for editors, but what I will say, to use your metaphor, is if you show up in the wilderness without a shovel and with a pair of pants that falls apart after a week, you're not going to get much gold. You're going to be coming back out of the chill, and you'll probably get a job as a bartender in the town saloon.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a good way to
there's,
spin it. But my thing is, when I say people selling shovels and jeans, I'm not talking about like coming unprepared. I'm talking about the folks out there that are kind of exploiting that, selling you a dream type thing. Like, because there are a lot of people out there that they will sell those services, saying, "Oh, I can do this, I can do that for you," and they're tapping into that. Like, "Oh, I want to be an author, I want to be a this, and I want to be a that." And they're tapping into that and they're charging people these fees, and there's all these like programs out there, and there's all these different things like, if you do this, you'll blah 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 blah. And the reality of it is that there is a lot of prep work. You have to do a lot of the stuff, and you have to show up. I mean, it's not a case against editors. I'm not saying this at all. What I'm just saying is, like,
right.
if even at a penny a word or whatever, half a cent a word, even let's just say half a cent a word at 50,000 words, that's $250. And
Yep.
you're going to invest money into your project, but you have to look at kind of like the logistics of it. Like, okay, well, if I hire an editor, I need to expect to pay them for their time, just like with any other craft. And this is what it's going to cost me. It's like a realistic type thing. You don't want to talk with somebody who's like, oh well, if you do this, you can have this and this and this. You need somebody that's going to be realistic with you about it.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. So I'll start big and then I'll go small. Hiring an editor is a decision that should be made within a larger writing and launching strategy. So if you're going to publish a book, especially in genre fiction, you need to be planning to basically publish a series, because one of the constants that's remained through all the turmoil in publishing is that if you are going to sell one book, you need to start working on the second one while you're preparing the first one for publication, because readers like series.
Yeah.
I'm a reader. I like series.
Yeah.
So hiring that editor is just one business decision of many that a writer is going to have to make. And they're going to have to think to themselves, okay, what is the budget that I'm going for? And when you are researching an editor, find one that works with indies. And also, and we're kind of closing in on some of the nitty gritty. Finding an editor shouldn't just be like, oh, I searched for editors and Rachel Brune's page came up, and look, hey, she offers all these different things. It could be as simple as I'm going to use Falstaff Publishing, John Hartness's Falstaff Publishing, as an example here. So I read a lot of the books that Falstaff publishes because they're fun, they're the genre that I love, and because they're well put together and they're well published. And when I say well published, I mean that I'm reading a book by a small press, but I know that it's going to be as polished and as entertaining and intriguing as any book that I would read anywhere else. So part of that is he has these people who work for him doing editing that is excellent. And those people are also freelance editors. So I'm an indie editor or indie author. I've got a project, maybe it's a 3-book project. I know that I want to have it as tight as it possibly could be. Maybe it's urban fantasy. So I see, oh, this is an editor that this publisher uses. That's a good indicator that that's a trusted editor. And a lot of editors too will offer like a 5,000 word edit or something for a couple of bucks, so that they can make sure they're a good fit with a writer before they embark on
Yeah.
a full-length project. So it really is all about seeing book publication as a strategy.
And that's
It's not just the writing, it's all parts that are coming together, and you have to kind of do your own math for each of those parts. But I really do believe that editing is important.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But that's one of the mysteries I want to kind of unravel for people is that hiring an editor, you're going to pay for the service, and you need to not get swung up or hung up in the idea of, there are people out there that are just trying to sell you a service, and there are a lot of good people out there too, like John, yourself, and others, who they get it, and that they don't want to, they don't want to take advantage of people. So that was one of the reasons why I was saying it like that about selling the picks, and the axes and the shovels and the jeans and stuff. Actually, I just said shovels and jeans, but that's why I was wanting to say that, because there's a lot of stuff out there. There are a lot of programs out there there are a lot of people out there that are trying to sell their product to tell you how to do your thing that you want to do. And there's a lot of good ones out there, but you don't want to get caught up in the idea of like, hey, I'm going to be an indie author, I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be that. Is it possible? Yes. Is it going to happen overnight? Probably not.
And if you want to be rich, this is not really.
Yeah, and I think that's a common misconception people have. They're like, oh, I want to be famous, and I want to be this, and I want to be that. It's like, there's a lot more to it than just that, and you don't want to, like I've seen people like, oh, like I have to have a laptop, or I have to have this program, or I have to have that. Like, you don't need those things to actually get started writing. You just need to write.
Yep. And also fame, just to back up for a second, fame is overrated because then you get weird people tweeting at you in your DMs, and that's just no fun. But I will say though that there's a lot of really great avenues to go, and if you're, if you don't have the budget for like a content edit and then a line edit and then a proofread, you could always do self proofread. One of the ways to do that I always do with everything is read your book backwards, read your story backwards, start at the end and read it word by word backwards. And that you'll find, because you won't be able to get caught up in the story because you're going backwards, of course. So your eye will start picking out all of those errors that it missed when you were reading it front to back. So that there's a technique that you could use. So, maybe you worked from a very strict outline. This is where outlines can really help. If you work from a very strict outline, that can help alleviate a lot of the issues that a developmental editor would be noticing. So maybe you just need a line editor to go through and make sure that your sentences are well constructed and not lazy. Or maybe you're more experienced, maybe you have a really great writing group, or some fellow authors who are willing to swap edits with you. I have a friend from my Texas writing group, Jim Reeder, who just really writes really great stuff. I'm hoping to get him for an anthology at some point. But every book that I've written, I've sent to him because he has just a very clear-eyed view of what's going on in the story, and he'll let me know exactly what needs to be fixed. It's good to have friends like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely ways to approach how to go through the editing process, but it is part of the process. It is something that needs to be, again, taken into account when you're setting up your budget and your strategy and your plan. Having a publication plan is super important. And I've published, I published a book way back when without really much of a plan. And the difference between that and setting a plan in place for the anthology is like night and day.
Yeah. Stay tuned real quick. Hold on for a second. Let me do the station ID. It's you're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And I'm your host, Adam Messer. This is the Adam Messer Show. And my special guest today is Rachel Brune. And we have been talking a lot about editing and stuff like that. And, Rachel, one of the reasons why I like to talk about some of the, like I was talking about the nitty gritty stuff, I like to focus on like the positive stuff, but I also like to say, hey, let's look at like some of the things that you need to be aware of, some of the pitfalls that you need to make sure that you're not like the little mind, little mines that are out there that you can step into, and just things blow up on you. You don't want that to happen. And
Oh no.
I've seen I've seen the selling somebody a dream thing happen a lot, especially this last year or so that I've been looking around for different things to help improve my writing. And you don't, like there's this, I guess there's this whole thing like talking about fame and that kind of stuff. There's this whole thing out there that it goes to people's heads, and I think it gets to them like they might have like an ego, or they might get like a little bit of attention, on a social media platform or something like that, and it just goes to their head. And there are folks out there that they're like, okay, well, one of the things I like to look at is if somebody's rating a book on writing or about editing or whatever, I like to look and see, do they actually have some credibility? Do they have work that they've got published? It's like, are you trying to tell me how to be a surgeon and you're not even a qualified doctor type thing? And there are a lot of folks out there like that. They're like, hey, like I'll give you an example. I wrote a book called How to Write a Better Press Release based off of my experience as a published journalist. Now, I'm not, a reporter or anything like that. Just strictly based off of my experience being a published journalist for a major metropolitan newspaper. That's my credibility, my background in leadership and my education. That's my credibility. Does that make me, the top expert in the field? No. But I have a point of reference. If I had published that book with no previous or prior experience, how can I say that, this is what I find works? But there are folks out there that are doing that kind of thing. And those are the kind of pitfalls, that I really feel like, before you put any money down for any kind of freelancer, and I've been doing freelance work for a long time now, look at their previous work, look at their references, check out their stuff. Like you said, that there's a lot of editors that'll do like a 5,000 word content edit or whatever for a few bucks. It's not only just the work, it's also the compatibility, like you said. I mean, do our personalities mesh? It's kind of a weird situation with you doing freelance editing, because I don't do freelance editing like that. But what I'll do is I'll help small businesses with copy on, like how they should write things. So it's an edit, I guess, like content editing, but I'm not doing for fiction, stuff like that. And it's a weird thing because you're in a position where you have to be the authority in that area, but they're also paying you, so they're a client. So you kind of have to have a balance of like, okay, like you said, what is it that you want to do? What are your goals? And how can we achieve that? And then you also have to be able to say, hey, that picture is not the best fit for what we're trying to do, or that, that line, that motto or whatever, that catchphrase that you've got, it's not the best fit. It would sound better like this, type thing. And that's a hard spot to be in sometimes, I mean, and as an editor, you have to be able to say no.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what I was talking about again in the last hour, which is approaching editing from a coaching perspective. And you've done a lot of leadership, you've done a lot of also some reading in the field of leadership and coaching. That to me was some of the most valuable information and experiences that I've had that I bring to the editing table. Because I've, like you said, there are people out there who are a little less ethical, and I've talked with writers who had a bad experience. And they're like, this editor was trying to make my stuff look more like their stuff, and they didn't listen to me. And they charged me all this money, and I had to still find another editor to actually help me. I'm like, that's, you hear these stories, and that's another reason why it's important to have a network of writers, so that you can, so you can go to them. Hey, so for instance, if you're if you've got your first novel or your second or even your 10th, and you're like, hey, I really need this sort of editor, you can find people who will recommend
Yeah.
editors.
Yeah.
You'll maybe, so like I said, I talk about Falstaff a lot because I lived in North Carolina for 6 years and we're moving back soon.
Okay, cool.
And they're one of the, there's a lot of folks who are in the writing community locally there. And so, if I were needing to hire an editor, I know where I would be going because I read their stuff, and people that I trust them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of what makes the writing community so great, is that people do, there's all this negative stuff, but if you're looking for help, if you're looking for people who are coming at this not from, hey, I'm going to make money of it, definitely I'm going to make money off it, but I'm also, and I say but other editors too are doing this because they really believe in it, and they really have just a talent or knowledge or experience to help make your work not just a story, but a great story, and not just a book, but something that will stay with the reader long after they close the pages. Because of course, as writers, that's what we want. We want people to experience our stories on an emotional level.
Yeah.
And anything. Yep.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head right there, on the emotional level, because long after you have something, like, let's just say, for an example, you have an argument with somebody. You might not remember what they said, but you will remember long after how they made you feel.
Oh, yes.
And we are emotional beings. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, but we are emotional beings. And speaking of emotional beings, I love WRUU as just as a fan myself and a host. And we're doing our pledge drive, so I need to play the pledge drive announcements real quick, Rachel.
Sure thing.
Let's just go ahead and everybody stay tuned. Like, listen to this. It's really important. This is how we do our thing here at WRUU.
What would you do if you woke up one day and WRUU weren't on your radio dial, like it wasn't even there anymore? You would not be able to find any place in Savannah to get the kind of music and news that only this community radio station brings you. Our more than 60 volunteer hosts would not be working right now to bring you hours of entertaining and stimulating programs. And your global soul would surely miss it. Thankfully, you don't have to wake up without WRUU, because people just like you have made generous financial gifts to keep us going. We are listener-supported community radio, so your donation is essential to our continued presence on the air in Savannah. Go right now to WRUU.org and make a one-time or monthly contribution.
Support WRUU with a financial contribution of at least $10 per month, or a one-time donation of at least $107.50, and you'll receive our 2019 thank you gift, a WRUU travel tumbler. This is a 16-ounce hot or cold beverage container featuring double wall construction with a stainless steel twist-on lid, a slide lock drink opening, and the WRUU logo. It's perfect for taking hot coffee or tea, or iced water or other drinks, with you wherever you go. From car to office, home to school, or gym to bedside, the WRUU travel tumbler will refresh your body as we refresh your mind. We know the real gift of your support comes every day when you tune into Savannah's most diverse, stimulating, and passionate radio programming. Find the details about the WRUU travel tumbler as a gift of our appreciation at WRUU.org. Make your gift right now. Thanks for supporting WRUU Community Radio.
All right, Sebastian Messer, everybody, with the band Krieger. Awesome, Bass. Thank you so much. Everybody, you're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and my special guest today is Rachel Brune. We've been talking about her new anthology with her small publishing house, Crone Girls Press, which is called Stories We Tell After Midnight. Rachel, I have to tell you, every time I went to share Stories We Tell After Midnight, I want to put the word "what" in front of it. What stories we tell after midnight? I'm like, I don't know why I want to keep putting the word "what" in front of there. Every single time I'm like, what story? And I've had to re-record. I've done a little, a couple of video, little promotional video things and whatever, trying to talk about it. Every time I'm like, what stories we want to tell after midnight? I'm like, what in the world? It's like one of those things. It's like Berenstain Bears or Berenstain Bears. Is it EI or AI? Is there a what there or no what? And there's no what.
It's when I was talking to the cover designer, so I bought the cover off of a site called goonwrite.com, GOONWRITE. And the gentleman who runs that site also designed the Crone Girls logo.
I love the logo, by the way.
Right?
I love the logo. It's so awesome.
And it was just like, I emailed him like, hey, I need something creepy.
Yeah.
And he's like, how about this? I'm like, yes, I love that.
Yeah, it is definitely creepy.
But yeah, he sent me back, once I finally had the list of authors for the front cover, I sent it back to him like, hey, here's the list of authors, here's the title, edited by myself. And he sent it back and he had added the stories we tell after midnight.
You're like, no, there's no the.
Yeah, I had to go back and be like, oh, sorry, dude. He's like, oh, man, my bad. But yeah, he's definitely, he's got that really cool grasp of horror covers.
Yeah.
And I'm going to I got to go back to him actually and get some more covers for the upcoming anthologies. But yeah, I love his stuff. But yeah, it is Stories We Tell After Midnight. And currently it's 99 cents for the Kindle version, and it'll be like that until October 21st when we launch for real. The print version will be available for $12.99, and then the price for the digital anthology will go up to $4.99. So it's definitely, if it's something you're thinking about, for $1, you can get it now and read it later.
And how much is the paperback going to be?
It's going to be $12.99 if you buy it through Amazon. If you buy it through one of the authors, it might depend on where they're selling it through. Okay.
Yeah, because I definitely going to have print copies here in Savannah, everybody, if you want to get them. And I'm going to take them down to East Shaver booksellers, and you'll be able to get them down there. One of the things, Rachel, and I love the fact that you've been so open and honest with us about the industry, and because there's all sorts of levels of what we're doing, with writing and publishing and editing and that kind of thing. What do you feel like are some of the top things that a fledgling writer should know when it comes to the editing process? Not about writing, not about whatever, just the editing process. What are some of the top things that they should know?
So I'm going to give you a couple of things. The first one is the lesson that I have to learn every time I edit something, which is start cutting. So don't edit until you finish writing. Yep. Okay? Get everything out on paper. But once you have everything out on paper, the very first thing you should do when you start to edit is start cutting away at the beginning of your story. And just keep cutting. Just keep cutting until your story doesn't make sense anymore, because that is the number one thing that I see from authors, is that their story doesn't start where they've actually started it. So for instance, if you've got a story about a couple of kids at a bonfire in the woods, and then there's a scary sound in the woods, really you need to start with the scary sound. Don't spend 5 pages setting up the exposition behind how they all got out there and who's the jock and who's the band geek, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. We know we can have a picture of kids around a bonfire in the woods and fill in the details later, but we want to know what is going to go wrong, especially in horror. and that's a scary sound in the woods. Put that on the very first page.
You know,
'Cause-
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's exactly what you suggested to me for my story, and to cut from the first scene that I had to the second scene. And I'm not going to give any spoilers out there, y'all. You're gonna have to read the book, but I thought that was interesting because following the 15 beats, I actually followed the 15 beats for that short story that I wrote, and I thought it was interesting that you were like, cut to this, and I was like, I thought about it, and I molded it over, and I was like, yeah, I could cut to that. It would make sense, and the part that I had written before, I felt made sense too, but you wanted to start from a little bit, I guess, more into the action, which is cool because it worked. And then I alluded back to previously the first scene without writing the first scene out. So I think that's a great point. So you say write first, edit later, cut to the chase right up front.
Yes, and there's 2 books that have been on my shelf for a long time, and I keep going back to them. The first one is called The Artful Edit by Susan Bell, and the subtitle is On the Practice of Editing Yourself. And it gives a really good perspective on what you need to know, how you need to step away from your writing and then come back to it with an editor's eye rather than a writer's eye.
Okay.
And then the second book is a book called The First 5 Pages by Noah Lukeman. And this was written from the perspective of an agent and traditional publisher. The subtitle is A Writer's Guide to Staying Out of the Rejection Pile. Now, even if you're an indie author, it's got some really great advice about what those first 5 pages need to be. And to be completely honest, this is something that I always have to do in my own work, because I always end up starting at least a couple of paragraphs if it's a short story, sometimes even an entire chapter before I need to start. But it's not a bad thing if you do. That's what you need to write to get you into the story, then write it. Just write what you need to write to get into the story. But then again, when you come back, think of those first 5 pages. Think of yourself as a submissions editor who's reading 10 to 15 submissions a day, or getting 10 to 50. How much am I really going to have a chance to pay attention to?
Yeah.
It's going to be those first 5 paragraphs. It's going to be, if it's a longer, like a novella, it's going to be those first 5 pages.
Rachel.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and if you're a reader reading that anthology, flipping through, because not everybody reads cover to cover, that reader is also going to need you to get their attention that quickly.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things. It's like engaging with the reader. I've had so much fun these last 2 hours. I can't believe that we're coming down to the last few minutes of our interview today. Where can people find your book, your new anthology?
Right now, Amazon is their best bet. Amazon.com. There is a link to the anthology on the CroneGirlsPress.com website. It's currently available for 99 cents, the Kindle version, and that is going to go up on October 21st. And the print version, it says it's available, but that will also not be available until October 21st.
And what about your editing services? Like if they want to contact you as an editor?
Absolutely. So I have a website. It's infamous, INFAMOUS-scribbler.com. And that's got my blog, and it also has a page for editing and coaching. So if people are interested in either hiring me for an edit, or if they'd like to find my Patreon and just find these writing exercises and resource roundups and things like that, you can come find me over there.
That is awesome, Rachel. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. I really appreciate you coming out.
Well, thanks for having me, because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, and honestly, I have the advanced copy that you sent me. I'm a hands-on reader. I like to have the book in hand. So I've been waiting to read the stories. I've kind of browsed through them, a little bit, checked it out, but I just can't wait till I get the paperback in hand to read it. So I'm really excited about it.
Excellent.
All right, everybody. So stay tuned at 5 o'clock. Or the Savannah at Night guys, and we've got the pledge driver information coming up again, and we really appreciate all your support. You've been listening to the Adam Messer Show. I hope you enjoyed our show today. You can check out our podcast at The Adam Messer Show on Apple Podcasts, as well as adammesser.libsyn.com, LIBSYN.com. And my website is adammesser.net. I would love to hear from you. Thanks.
What would you do if you woke up one day and